Now, nobody on the coaching side of this is getting more love than one guy in particular. I think you know who this is. Not Andy Reid. It's not. I think you know who it is, but maybe you're not that bright or you're tired or something and you don't know. So the answer is Steve Spagnuolo. Tyreek Hill, of all people, not a defensive player. Although if you're around Tyreek, you might have to get into a defensive posture depending on his mood. But anyway, I kid because I care. So this is a social media post from Dolphins wide receiver Tyreek Hill, an ex-Chief, who questioned why Chiefs defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo has not received any head coaching interviews in recent years. The Chiefs have now won back-to-back Super Bowls. And radio silence in the coaching interview department for Steve Spagnuolo. So the Rams chief operating officer, you probably don't know who that is. Why would you? I'm a Ram fan, and I don't really know who this guy is. The guy's name is Kevin Demoff. And he responded in a very interesting way. Kevin Demoff responded to Tyreek Hill. He threw his support behind the Super Bowl winning coordinators. Spags now has the record, 4 Super Bowl winning defenses under his tutelage in the NFL. Here's what the Rams COO said. He said, quote, "It is well past time to see Spags get another head coaching opportunity. The team and organization he inherited in St. Louis, the St. Louis Rams, was a mess. Nobody could have had success, yet he changed the culture, staff, and players believed in him. An amazing human deserving of the real shot we couldn't give him," close quote. So there's a lot to pick apart at that, and I'd like to do it with you. And so let's discuss the question. Chiefs defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo, endorsed by the COO of the Rams as a head coach again and others. Which way are you leaning on this one? So I've got mushrooms, Cabbage Patch Kid, and Trivial Pursuit. We will combine all of these things together, and we are going to create a stomachache, which is what you had if you watched Steve Spagnuolo coach the old St. Louis Rams. A big stomachache. So, hey, listen, the way I'm leaning is away from Spags. I'm leaning away from Steve Spagnuolo. I just shake my head no. Just no. No, N plus O, no. Steve Spagnuolo had a shot. And it was so bad, so terrible, that should be it. Hey, that should be it. We should just let it rest and say, well, what about a second chance? I think we're good. Didn't work out for him. Didn't work out for the Rams. Or maybe it did work out with the Rams. But regardless, this guy, Kevin Demoff's like, well, this was in a tough situation, which is really a bad look. More on that in a second for the Rams. And if I was in St. Louis right now, I'd be irate. I'm not. But if I was in St. Louis, I'd actually be eating toasted ravioli right now is what I'd be doing. But anyway, as far as Spagnuolo is concerned and the situation, he failed to show anything to the outsider as coach of the Rams. He was a mushroom farmer. You know how hard it is to screw up mushrooms? Seriously. Mushrooms will grow in dark places. You don't need sunlight to grow mushrooms. In fact, they do better in dark, damp places. And the St. Louis Rams were a dark, damp place, and yet no mushrooms grew. It didn't work. Spagnuolo coached 48 games, so the Rams had a .208 winning percentage. If you look at the history of the NFL, when you think of bad coaches, who do you think of? You think of Hugh Jackson? I do. How about Gus Bradley? He sucks, right? Well, Steve Spagnuolo is on the short list of terrible coaches all time. He is a contemporary of Hugh Jackson and Gus Bradley. .208 winning percentage, coach of the Rams. And he's on the short bus with guys like Josh McDaniels. We call him McDummy. Wade Phillips, Norvell Turner, Rod Marinelli, and a bunch of others who were really good coordinators and did not get her done as head coach. And we know that being a great coordinator does not guarantee anything. That skill set and the skill set to be a head coach are totally different skill sets. And as far as the Rams exec, the COO, Kevin Demoff, did he not self-incriminate himself? I'm happy. I'm a Rams fan. I'm happy the Rams are back in L.A. I stopped having a favorite team when the Rams left for St. Louis. I said, I'm not a Rams fan anymore. And then they came back. But doesn't it seem, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but doesn't it seem like Kevin Demoff pretty much admitted the rumor is true, that the whispers around the NFL were accurate, that the Rams spent 10 years trying to lose so that they wouldn't get the money they needed to stay in St. Louis, and they had a plan starting in the early aughts or the mid-aughts to be so bad for an extended period of time that the Rams would be able to relocate to Los Angeles, get back to L.A. and get that stadium built, which is now built, and they've had a Super Bowl there, and they've won a Super Bowl. It certainly seems like that's what is happening here. All right, now, turning the page. There's some transaction news out there. Tee Higgins, reports saying that he's going to be franchise tagged by the Cincinnati football team. So how will Tee Higgins' camp react if the Bengals actually do franchise tag him? So we know the answer to this without it even playing out. The position will be this: akin to a child being forced to eat their veggies. Doesn't go very well. I don't like my veggies. And you start throwing a tantrum. You're not going to play any more video games unless you eat your peas. Screw you. Right? And so we know how this works. The franchise tag is not seen as a blessing. It's seen as a curse. On this side, though, just for the record, if Fox Sports Radio had a franchise tag, I would want the franchise tag every year. I think it's a hell of a thing. I wish we had it where I work. I think it would be great. To me, it's blasphemy, these NFL players that push back. It's absurd. I would like you to make me a Cabbage Patch Kid. Just give me all the cabbage. All the cabbage you get as a franchise player, and especially for a guy like Tee Higgins. Of all the players, this is a guy that should not bitch if he's the franchise player in Cincinnati, and here's why. You know who's in the big chair for the Bengals? It's not our caller, Justin in Cincinnati. No. It's Jamar Chase. He's number one on the depth chart. He is. He's in the big chair, as our old morning guy back in the day used to say. You know who's riding shotgun? Tee Higgins. He's in the passenger seat. He's not behind the wheel at the wide receiver room. He's not. So you're telling me the Bengals are going to, a team that doesn't pay anybody. I guess you can't say that anymore because they paid Burrow and they paid Jamar Chase. But historically, right, not good. So the Bengals are going to pay their number 2 receiver as a number 1 receiver with a franchise tag. And he's got a problem with that? Okay. Now, keep in mind, even if this does happen, it does not guarantee that Tee Higgins will return. It is a story to file away. It is a story to monitor. Because you and I both know from our years of paying attention to the silly season of the NFL, just because you're franchise tag doesn't mean you'll play on the tag. There's players that hold out. There's also players that make such a hullabaloo that they force their way to another team. And if Higgins makes a big enough stank and raises a ruckus, then he can force his way out. He can force his way out. All right, now, last word. We head to Dallas. It has been nearly 30 years since the Cowboys, the Dallas Cowboys, last won a Super Bowl. In fact, it was pointed out to me by a listener that the Dallas Cowboys, everyone goofs on the Cowboys, but yet they have won a Super Bowl in less time than the 49ers, meaning they won after the 49ers last one. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Anyway, get to the point, please. So NFL gossip hounds have informed us that this is going to be especially fascinating, this Cowboy offseason. Why? because Jerry Jones is dealing with the D, and not the D for Dallas, the D for desperation. The D for desperation. He is desperate to win the first Super Bowl for the Cowboys and him since 1995. So Jerry Jones, big headlines. Jerry Jones desperate for the Cowboys to win Super Bowl 59 in the Bayou. Do you find that significant? Is there any significance in that? So this is negligible, right? It's negligible is what it is. That's the word I will use here. Paying attention to Jerry Jones' off-season rhetoric is a trivial pursuit. And we did a monologue about this a couple weeks ago when the Cowboys were eliminated by Green Bay for almost 30 years. And unfortunately, I've been behind the microphones for most of that. It's the same gibberish. It's a similar thing to like the migration of the monarch butterfly. It happens on a yearly basis. The way it works, same migration. You start with the agony of defeat, losing a playoff game, often at home. Often at home, you lose a playoff game. You're the Dallas Cowboys. Then you take about 3 or 4 days of mourning. You then say next year is going to be different. We are committed to winning. Next year is going to be different. You have unbridled optimism. Day by day, you create excitement. You sign a washed-up player who's got a big name. Everyone gets all giddy. This time, it's going to be different. Whee! Of course, then what happens is it's like the Peanuts, and the other teams in the NFC are like Lucy, and the Cowboys are Charlie Brown. And we know what happens when you try to kick the football. You pull the ball back, and there you go.